Good morning all. So another wet day in Dublin, and today I wanted to talk about what I reckon is the true motivations of most politicians. Not all, but the vast majority of them. This applies to anywhere in the world, whether you are living in a representative democracy or you're living under an authoritarian rule. It's basically the same deal. Politicians may go into the profession with very lofty motivations, but one underlying thing does take the biscuit, so to speak, is the ultimate goal of politicians, whether they like to admit it or not. And you can count on your hand the amount of politicians who willingly gave up this particular aspect, and that is to retain power. The vast majority of politicians are only really in the system because they want to attain power to achieve their other ends, and then they want to maintain that power. To do so, you have various different options, and a lot of my thoughts on this stem from a very good book called The Dictator's Handbook, which outlines a lot of very interesting, thought-provoking ideas with regard to the motivations of politicians and leaders. And while I mightn't agree with everything that was put down in that particular piece, I do agree with most of it. So, to attain power, the politicians have to gain the support of key groups. If you're aiming for a dictatorship, the main group, of course, would be the army. But other groups like the police, like key business leaders, would also be important. And we can see this very clearly with how Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, managed to attain power. Putin was Russia was a nominal democracy up until the point that Putin managed to get into the system. And by allying himself with the oligarchs, the top richest people in the Russian system, allying himself with the army, allying himself with these police forces, especially the special police force, he managed to manipulate the system to allow him to basically rule for life. In a democracy like Ireland, the key groups are, of course, the voters, but you can put the voters into blocks of people who will, who, if you can provide a good, or at least promise a good service for those particular blocks and cater to their needs, you're guaranteed their votes. For example, pensioners would be a key block in the Irish system. In this way, other blocks which don't tend to vote can be ignored, and commonly are. In Ireland here, for example, the people under the age of 20 tends to be ignored by the politicians because they don't really understand the system, so they tend to not vote in the same numbers as elderly people or people who are on old age pensions. So this is how politicians gain power. But once they're in power, then they need to have the support of key groups within the political system in order for them to maintain their power grip. The supporters that put you into power are very different from the supporters that keep you there. And so business leaders, the military, key people in we'll say science and that sort of thing would be commonly the main supporters. Farmers would be, in the Irish system anyway, would be a group that would maintain you in power. So when people look at a current leader, we'll say like Donald Trump, for example, he made lots of promises and lots of motivational aspirations to aid the poor in society in the United States, but ended up, as we can see over the last 15-16 months, he ended up, once he was in power, catering to the ultra-rich and the military-industrial complex, in particular with this war against Iran, breaking a lot of his key promises to those who actually managed to put him into power, who are the voters. So that is my perspective, the main motivation of most politicians. Now, it's not to say the politicians can't do good. Yes, of course they can. Once a politician gets into power, he or she can push forward their own agendas and their own motivations. But on the whole, they tend to be looking at the ultimate prize, which is getting re-elected. And if they don't have re-election prospects like Trump doesn't, they can basically do whatever they want, because they know they're not going to get re-elected. So it's better to act like a complete bandit or Viking, take everything that you can, line your own pockets, rather than actually serve the people, because the people won't get you back into power again. So that is my perspective on politicians and their motivations. Have a nice day.